only the first floor of this hotel is done, and the other two still need completing. So, let's put the human helpers back to work. The first thing to build was the rooftop terrace that went on top of the art gallery. Both of those are extended versions from the original. Many parts that are used to build this terrace were also used in the interiors of the first floor extension room, so the parts to build this were already sorted. One key difference between this build and the original is that part of the hotel wall is actually built on top of this terrace. You can see it on the right-hand side of this build. I guess this was done because of the plate sizes available in the sets. And building the terrace one stud inside the wall was the easiest solution. One downside of this is that the terrace will get sandwiched between the floors, so you can't take it off when the second floor is on. But I can live with it. Then it was time to sort the rest of the parts. During the sorting, we also fixed the mistake that we had done in the first part of the build. We had placed the masonry bricks around the windows the wrong way around. But that was quite easy to fix. The sorting took a couple of hours, so we can skip all that. Mr. Human Helper was quite anxious to get something built, so he started building the second floor, while Mrs. Human Helper was still sorting parts. Those floor assemblies were actually relatively difficult to build, because their shape is quite unusual. In addition to your standard rectangle, you also have some diagonals and circles to worry about. And because this is a double alt build, it adds some interesting part constraints to the mix. So you have more wedge plates than you would need, and you need to build that extension rectangle out of wedge plates by placing their diagonals opposite to each other. Because the sorted parts took quite a lot of space on the build table, we decided to do things a bit differently and build all the floor sections at start. But a couple of layers of plate didn't hold up together that well without the walls. Here Mr. Human Helper tries to test fit it, but ends up breaking it. So we decided to add one more layer of bricks to support it. By building the floor sections and the roof first, we could get all that big plate out of our build table, and there would be more room. And now it's better. And then on to building the second floor section. That is quite similar compared to the first one. Actually, getting more space on the build table wasn't the only reason I wanted to get the floor sections and the roof built first. I was planning to make a modification for this build after it was done, but in order to make it, I needed to see which plates I had available when the build was finished. And the floor sections and the roof were the only parts that really used the bigger plates. So by building those first, I could easily see if I had enough leftover plates for my modification. And once again, we added one layer of bricks to help support the floor section. And then we kind of had to do this all over again because it was time to build the roof. So in that sense, this build order is not that good of an idea. This started to feel very repetitious because we were building the same shape third time in the row. It really makes little difference if that opening in the plate work is for stairs or for a skylight. The only real difference was that instead of adding a one layer of bricks, we could actually finish the whole roof section, because there wasn't that much to add after the plate work had been completed. At this point, you can see that the human helpers found out that they had lost one of those clear pieces for the skylight. After a bit of searching, they just decided to skip over that part, because it would be really easy to add later on once it was found. But after this build session, we spent more time searching it, and we couldn't find it at all. But then I had an idea. And there it is. But we needed to go through the trashes in order to find it. Clear piece is easy to miss, and somehow it was in there. A bit of a shock, right? Perhaps it wasn't a good idea to take a nap during the build session. Apparently, the human helpers need constant supervision. Luckily, I had all this build footage available, and I could easily see the part where one pack is opened and only 3 of those parts come out of it. So the fourth one had to be still inside that bag. So now we have a new house rule. All the opened part packs will go inside the original cardboard box while the build is still ongoing. And we will put them in the trash bin only after the build is complete. But enough of all that. Time to get back to the build. That dome was a really interesting thing to build. And it really looks like an actual dome, even if it's built out of Lego. And finally, it was time to start building some walls on those floor sections. You can get an idea of the layout even at this early stage, because the walls will go on top of that layer of bricks that is already in there. And those yellow pieces are the doormats, so the doors will go next to those. And that opening is for the stairs that will come from the first floor. So you can see that this floor will have 2 hotel rooms in it. And of course, we'll need stairs to the 3rd floor. The back wall is quite a straightforward build. And same goes for the wall between the hotel rooms. Then we got onto the interesting part and started building some furniture for the hotel rooms. The bedside table and clothes cabinet already went in for the other room, and now it's time to build the clothes cabinet for the room closer to you. Then some bigger cabinets are built for the both rooms. Some loose parts there in the bottom, I guess. And then it was time to build some beds. For a hotel, it makes perfect sense to have the exact same furniture pieces in both rooms. For other builds, it could look a bit odd if you have 2 of every single detail there, but for a hotel, it just works. The next pieces were a pair of very elaborate chairs and a couple of black armchairs. All of these details come from the original set, but they're just built for the other room too. Same goes for these desks too. I was actually really surprised to see that the original build already had 2 hotel rooms in this floor. It wasn't possible in this build because the hallway takes a lot more space in this version. Perhaps it would have been possible to build 3 rooms in this floor. But I was quite happy with these larger rooms. I see these as sort of a business rooms. The beds are quite standard, but there is quite a lot of room where you can work and then relax after working. Quite a lot of windows to build, but then again, it makes sense that the architectural features are repeating. Like these white pillars here. We had to build quite a lot of those. Then it was time to put the doors in, and you could start to see how it would all look once it was completed. Once that layer of bricks was on top of the windows, everything became really solid. One of the final features of this floor were these rows of arches that were placed on top of the windows. Here you can see the black handcuff pieces used as a railing for the balcony. Then some flags. And finally, it was time to put the last layer of tiles on top of the walls. And after that, the whole floor was complete. We just had to test fit it, even though the third floor was not complete at this point. But we had the roof already. And the building kind of looked nice even without the third floor. But I think that without that floor, that green dome kind of looks out of place because you're not seeing that color anywhere else. But there is a really easy fix for that one, and that is building the third floor. Surprisingly, some of the decorations and hand railings were added for the rooftop terrace on top of the art gallery at this point. This floor also has 2 rooms in it. The one closer to you is pretty much the exact same room that it is in the original build. And the other room is kind of a replica of it, but it's of different shape. These are kind of a luxury rooms with big king-size beds and nice bathrooms with big bathtubs and so on. After the initial slower start, it was once again time to add some bricks to the walls. And all of a sudden, they were gaining height rapidly. Here the human helpers are building the nice big bathtubs. After that, it was time to build the wall details. That meant quite a lot of copies of that same sub-assembly. I found it quite surprising that the walls were already getting quite high, but there still wasn't any furniture in the rooms. Once again, many copies for windows and pillars. And the same for the other side. Then it was just more bricks for the walls, windows for the backside, and then once again, more bricks for the walls. Once these arches were added on top of the windows, they looked quite beautiful. Then, finally, it was time to build some furniture for the rooms. Couple of really old TVs, and then the king-size beds. Those looked really luxurious. There even was some chocolate on top of those beds. Next, it was time to build some smaller furniture for the rooms. That meant bedside tables, small round tables, and armchairs. Once all that was in, it was time to build these big clothes cabinets. Those actually looked quite a bit more expensive than the ones downstairs. Next, we built a couple of lamps and added some mirrors. Once the doors were placed in, it all started to come together once again. That balcony needed a door frame or pillars or whatever, and that was actually quite interesting thing to build. I also noticed that the door didn't open up all the way, so I checked the original instructions and I found out that the door is supposed to open towards the room rather than towards the balcony. So in this case, I decided to follow the original instructions rather than the outbuilt instructions. And once again, we had reached that point where you can add the tiles on top of the floors. And you know that you're almost done. Then it was time to put everything together. Adding all that green in makes the whole building look quite a bit different. And finally, it was time to top it up with the roof. And the building was all done. And I got to say that I really love how this building now looks. It keeps all the distinctive features from the original, but it also makes adding building to that site closer to you quite a bit easier. Lastly, it was time to add a couple of small mini builds and all the minifigures. We thought it would be possible to build 2 of these luggage carriers, but no, some of the parts from the other copy were already used in the microphone stand that was placed in the bar of the hotel. The other mini build was this coffee cart that came once again straight from the original. And the last part was building the minifigures. I gave Mr. Human Helper pretty much a free rein to come up with some new builds to get rid of the duplicates. But coming up with those took him quite a while. But in the end, I think he was quite successful. The originals are in the bottom row. So, a couple of hotel workers, a barista, this finely dressed man, an older lady, a backpacker, and the art gallery owner. In the top row, we have 2 different looking hotel workers, another barista, a different looking finely dressed man, younger blonde lady, this edgy woman with a top hat. The hat comes from this guy, and the other hat comes actually from an art piece. And finally, a different looking backpacker. I like the overall result quite a lot. And here you can see all the minifigures and mini builds placed outside the hotel. I tried to place the duplicates further away from each other so they would look all different at a glance. So, now the hotel is complete in a way. I still want to do some modifications for this set. One of those is the raised dome designed by Funpakesy. I had the idea of building a modified version of that only uses the leftover parts that were available from this build. So, that will be the topic of the next video. And spoiler alert, we will get it done. If you want to get a notification as soon as that video is up, you should consider hitting that subscribe button down there. I'll upload the new video ASAP, but remember, when a Sloth says that, it means as slowly as possible. Bye bye.